Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nugget News. Today we've got a new segment and we're going to be doing a monthly update on the mining world, hash rates, what coins are profitable to mine. Today we're going to dive into a little bit of the history of mining and how it's changed as well. But I want to introduce Will from Mining Store. So thanks for joining us, Will.
Thanks for having us, Alex. Good morning.
And I guess, do you want to start off maybe giving us a little bit of backgrounds into how you guys got into crypto and then into mining as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it did start off as a bit of a hobby around the 2014 period for us. This is me and my business partner, Cal. We were always the ones at school that were building our own computers, the geeks of the group, I suppose. And so we knew from online groups that we were involved in what Bitcoin was. We were building GPU and CPU rigs at the time. We weren't really into ASICs or FPGAs, which we'll dive into later. But then fast forward a couple of years, in around 2017, I was working in foreign exchange. And basically, a lot of the people there were looking to trade this asset on the CFD market, and they were leading towards myself. So became a bit more than a hobby. And basically, I left my job, teamed up with Cal. He gave me the call one day and said, "Mate, this is a bit more than a hobby now. Let's put our back and bone into it." And so we started up Mining Store, and yeah, that's pretty much how we got into it all.
Fantastic. Yeah, as you say, you kind of already mentioned that back in the day, you could mine crypto on a computer. I remember trying to learn how to do it all, and it was a little bit over my head at the time. And then GPUs, graphics cards, became more popular. But now you guys are Australia's largest supplier of mining equipment, and FPGAs and ASICs are all the rage. So do you want to maybe describe for people at home the difference about how it's changed and the difference between those two now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, basically GPUs and CPUs were the rage at the time. There were actually ASICs and FPGAs on the market, but people were a bit less educated, maybe didn't trust the bigger suppliers that much, what they were kind of offering. And so people took it into their own hands, which is kind of cool in the nature of decentralization, people building their own rigs. And so, yeah, back in the day, it was just those big GPU rigs. Leading into about 2017, what happened was people got a bit excited, I suppose, saw Bitcoin going through the roof and put a lot of their money into building these mining rigs. The market got a bit flooded. And then once the price came down, it really wiped out those GPU and CPU miners. So they weren't as profitable anymore. But came a new evolution, and the FPGA and ASIC miners. Today, that's probably what 80 to 90% of our community are mining with. So only difference really between an ASIC and an FPGA is an ASIC is locked to one algorithm. So to keep it simple, BTC is on the SHA-256 algorithm. Basically, if you have an ASIC miner, you can only mine BTC with a SHA-256 ASIC miner, as opposed to FPGA miners are a little bit more like the CPU and GPU, but you can reprogram them to mine different coins. And we'll dive into that a little bit later as well.
Yeah, so ASIC literally stands for specific circuit. So there's always a bit of a trade-off, and I'm sure we're going to get into what we're going to use where as well. But hottest topic of the month, and it's probably going to be something we'll update on every month, and that's the halving that's approaching. So look, we've covered this in a fair bit of detail, and I know everyone's talking about it. So do you have any thoughts you maybe want to add just as a general intro before we get into a few of the slides?
Yeah, basically, as you said, it is one of the hottest topics of the month. I know when I came and met you up in Launceston, pretty much everyone in that room, what is the halving? And, you got the beginners thinking that the whole supply is going to halve. And, some of more the experts are understanding it's just the increase of supply that's reducing. So, as I said on the slides there's a bit of a definition or a write-up for those who are a bit more interested. But I think the biggest thing to focus on is how it's going to affect the total network hash rate on the market, and subsequently how it's going to affect price as well. So we will have a look at previously how it's affected both of those variables, and try to kind of get a bit of an understanding of what might happen coming up in the next Bitcoin halving in May next year.
Yeah, and I'll probably say we're going to look at the previous halvings, and I'll just preface it by saying back in 2012, it was a very tight-knit community of mainly technical focused people. And then in 2016, I wouldn't say that the halving wasn't as exciting. It actually was a lot of people talking about it and a lot of people thinking it was going to pump the price. So I know some people say, oh, this is the first time it's ever been a lot of excitement. But I think 2016, there was a fair bit of excitement. So let's check out the slide you've got for us there in 2012. And it's quite interesting that the hash rate dropped a fair bit and price kind of dropped beforehand, didn't it, in anticipation?
Yeah, exactly right. So, I mean, you're exactly right there. The first Bitcoin halving, as we can see here, it's a bit of an uneducated market, I think. The miners probably didn't really realize that their rewards were going to halve, and people who were buying it as an asset probably didn't realize that the supply or new supply was going to halve either. So, I mean, as you can see here, leading into the halving, the hash rate is going exponentially high, and then as soon as that halving comes in, we basically see a great decrease in the network hash rate. Whereas the opposite happens to price, where price is just going up, and as soon as that halving happens, we get an more than exponential, it's just accelerated price increase. The chart that we can see there actually cuts it short, but if you zoom out or you want to go and have a look at around the date there in 2012, you will see it just keeps on shooting on up. So I think, you nailed it there, and we'll have a look at the second halvening when, as you said, people actually did know what was going on. But in that first halvening, just a matter of an uneducated market, I think.
Yeah, and uneducated is interesting because these guys are extremely smart, but in terms of trading and logistics, I don't think a lot of people were thinking about how it's going to affect it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even myself, we got it in 2014 on the mining side, but by no means did I have a real understanding of how the cryptonomics of Bitcoin worked. I didn't really understand why the halvening was happening, as opposed to now where people, completely understand it's an ecosystem that's essentially being built. So,
absolutely. So next up here, we do have the 2016 halvening. And this, I'll just mention quickly that this was a little bit faster than the 4 years that it should be roughly, because mining was just accelerating so quickly. And we'll have a look at that in a second as well. But it's kind of bringing forward the halvening each time because so many people are accelerating that hash rate. But it's interesting that it was definitely more sideways in terms of the hash rate and the price action this time around.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really good point that you make there, that we can actually see it in one of the latest slides, how much hash rate is going onto the network as well. But yeah, as you said, it's consolidating leading into the halvening. Even after the halvening in this market, the miners aren't as shocked. They're kind of looking at it now as a long-term asset. This is here to stay. A lot of people might not have realized that, they would have thought that Bitcoin's here to stay after 2017 or perhaps after the recovery of 2018. But yeah, basically that hash rate is consolidating. It doesn't drop down drastically. And then basically, I think what's interesting to follow here is there's a bit of a sheep mentality. When price does finally take off 4 months later, you really see that network hash rate break out of that consolidation period. And miners are pretty much at this point in time following price. If price goes up, they're going to build more miners and take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I'd probably say that there was a little bit of a run-up in anticipation. That was maybe what I was mentioning before, in excitement, and it sold off. But at the same time, we'd just come out of a 2-year crypto winter, so I don't think that everyone was in too much of a rush to sell their coins or panic. And it was probably the first time that people were realizing that, yeah, this is real, it's not dead, after that really tough 2014, 2015. So it seems like it's always an interesting, important time that the halving seems to fall on, and it's probably the case next time around as well.
Yeah, it's almost scary how it falls like that. It's like, it seems to just perfectly match up or fall on an interesting point in time. So
yeah, and if anything, that run up from 3,000 to 14,000, that looking back on it now, it seems to be very unnatural, and maybe that's an anomaly, because otherwise it's starting to feel like a 2014-15 bear market that we're in at the moment.
I'd have to agree.
Cool. So next up, we've got the current halving, and there's no doubt that we've seen hash rate absolutely explode this year.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. I know you had Andreas on your stream not too long ago, and he was talking about, that people don't realize that the amount of hash rate that we have on this market is actually far beyond what we need to keep a secure network. So, one thing I've heard people talk about is, price isn't high enough for the miners to get that reward that they need. But really, the hash rate is well beyond what we actually need it to be. So there's plenty of room for that to come down. That's one interesting point. But yeah, I mean, what we've seen here in terms of the mentality of, from an investment point of view as a miner, what they're really starting to realize is this is a long-term investment. If we build out and mine as much Bitcoin as we possibly can, price is going to take care of itself in the long term. It's a storage of value asset. And so even with, price coming down at the moment, hash rate is still staying up quite high around that kind of 100 to 80 exahash rate. And we'll go into what that means, kind of those metrics on the side there. But yeah, definitely it's, looking like people are ignoring the fact that price might come down and still willing to expand.
Yeah, and there's the old adage about whether price leads hash rate or vice versa. I think it actually can change what leads what, but at some point they come together. We can't have heaps of hash rate and unprofitable miners forever. At some point they go broke, or at some point price goes up and they become profitable again.
100%. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I feel like perhaps if price was to crash majorly, then the network would go, okay, we need to pull back, or we need to lower our power bills, things like this. But when it's kind of that even point, I think now miners are starting to be willing to take out a Bitcoin collateralized loan to keep up their operation and looking at it more in the long term. But who knows what will happen if Bitcoin crashed to below 5,000? Perhaps we would see a big network hash rate reduction.
Yeah, and that's probably an interesting point as well, as about the futures markets didn't exist in previous cycles. So now we've got futures and options. And I know not everyone is into all this stuff, but basically it means that you can hedge. So you can start to sell, lock in a future price. Now that might be better or worse off, you don't know, but at least giving you some certainty to your income.
Yeah. You're not as dependent on just the mining rigs that you've got there. You can hedge it and hang in there for a bit longer, so to speak. So, yeah.
And all this stuff is just a sign of a maturing market. Just like gold miners, some of them choose to lock in all their gold supply when there's a high price and they're happy. Others choose to speculate and hope the price keeps going up in the future. But exactly. the industry is certainly maturing. So next up, you've got the different definitions. And I think just for people at home, a lot of confusing terms, but the growth of the computing power is, in the factors of thousands, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's astronomical. I mean, the images on the side there aren't perfect to see, but if you do zoom in, you can kind of see that in the 2012 period where that first halvening happened, we're still in the terahashes. And, if you look over on the left, it kind of skips petahashes, goes straight to exahashes, and that's 1 quintillion of a terahash. So, I mean, the amount of hash rate going onto the market, it's pretty incredible. I think this slide here is more just so people can have a glance at that and understand what is a kilohash, what is a megahash, what's a gigahash. If you're mining Bitcoin, it is measured in terahashes. So this miner behind me right here is an M20S miner, and that one basically is a terahash miner. So going back to what we used to have on the market, one of those miners was kind of supplying the whole, it's a bit scary like that. But yeah, I mean, good little slide there. Good for people to understand how much hash rate is actually being increased in the market.
And do you have any thoughts around Moore's Law for people at home, that technology keeps roughly getting twice as good every 2 years, but we kind of hit the limit in terms of what the chips are now capable of doing? And I've heard other people say, well, we're always going to continue to improve. Something's around the corner.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. So to cut it simple, copper can actually really go so far. And so what you will see early days, we had chips that were, giving 14 terahashes of power. And then a year later, it was going up to 30 and then 60. Now, each year, we're really only seeing it go from 65 to 68 to 72. So, there is a big reduction in the increase of the speed technology is coming at. And that's a really good thing for miners at the end of the day, because, you don't want to buy something and then 2 years later, someone can buy the same piece of equipment, but it's giving double the power. So that is kind of reducing now and giving a more even playing field for retail miners as well.
Yeah, and I think back in the day, it was even 6 months' time, and Bitmain could have had their new miner out and they were mining and not releasing it. So you were always behind the 8 ball. And I think that playing field is catching up. And I want to mention, this week we've seen those reports out of China, 2/3 of mining in China. But we've seen some big investments, $50 million into Layer 1, going to the US to set up, it was near a natural gas plant, and they want to build their own chips as well. So they're doing the Bitmain the whole start to finish, near a renewable energy source. It's another part of the US versus China trade war, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. I wouldn't be surprised if this market does come between US and China. I think China would probably win that battle. I mean, at the moment, they're definitely the ones that a lot of the equipment is coming out of. But yeah, I mean, as I said, I think it does tie back to that more mature market. As you said, that there are futures, there's options, people can hedge, they can look at it as more as a feasible business investment to get into the cryptocurrency mining. So yeah, I mean, it's all interesting stuff, and it's good to be a part of as well.
Yeah, I mean, we see Russia and China hoarding gold, and if Bitcoin does become that competitive asset, which is going to make that dynamic so interesting, imagine the US saying, right, we're going to start to really aggressively mine Bitcoin and we want to hoard it, and China say, well, we're not going to sell chips and export them to the US. And maybe that's a few years off, but I definitely think that in terms of the trade war and technology, this is definitely something that's possible to heat up between the two superpowers.
For sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is who can produce cheaper electricity. And from naturally, people might say that China can get cheaper electricity, but when you look at hydro, gas, as you said, these are opportunities that potentially actually have, Canada's got one of the best sources of hydroelectricity in the world. These countries could step in and have a really impressive competitive advantage. So, I mean, it's always interesting to watch it play out. But I think the main point there is that this market is really maturing.
Yeah. And I'll just to wrap that up, I was reading about the natural gas, and there's just so much capacity at some of these plants that they just flare it and burn it off in the atmosphere. So once again, it's not really wasting any energy; it's just making use of that spare capacity.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, so Bitcoin halving, we've sort of talked about that. If everything goes well, we're hoping that the price increase. But anything to add there?
Not really. I think that last slide just wraps it up, and it'll be a nice conclusion. As you can see there, it shows each column, the first one being red, blue, and then green. And the price essentially has just gone along that exponential kind of range. At the moment, we are at the bottom end of that exponential range. So coming into the halving at a price prediction based on that logarithmic scale, I think it could be anywhere between 10,000 to 30,000. Really depends on what happens with the market. But from a basic chart point of view, that's what looks possible.
Absolutely. That's what we're all hoping for. So next up, why mine cryptocurrency? We hear all sorts of different things about how it's profitable and unprofitable, particularly in somewhere like Australia where maybe the power costs are higher. So is this a hobby thing for people to enjoy and get educated on, or is it possible to still make money?
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, what I like to focus on are the benefits and the disadvantages as well. So I think it's important to make it clear that mining isn't for everyone. There's some people in Australia that have 40 cents kilowatt hours, and they come to us and say, look, I'm looking to mine. And at the end of the day, we kind of say to them, look, it's probably you haven't got the competitive advantage. But the benefits that are there for mining, one particular is that you're generating a passive income. And you're not only generating a passive income, you're also getting exposure to the fastest growing financial asset that the market has to offer as well. So you can, I think you talk to a lot of your members about what strategy they should take with, accumulating Bitcoin. And some people look to buy at the lows and try to sell at the highs. But I think one of the great videos that I saw from yourself, Alex, was that dollar cost averaging. And that's essentially what you're doing as a miner. You're cutting out the psychological side of trading, and you're just taking bit by bit, $10, $15 per day in revenue from your mining. And in the long run, personally, that's been the best way for me to go about it. But yeah, I mean, you got any comments on?
Well, I was just going to say, some of these other coins, it's not just Bitcoin, we should say. So a lot of these other coins, these smaller coins, are more profitable, and you can very easily convert them to Bitcoin if that's what you want to do. Now, other people like to take a punt on some of these smaller coins, and if they gain traction, obviously you can get your 10 baggers and whatnot and make money from the nominal increase as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think we will touch in on that. That kind of comes into the FPGA mining side of things, which is what personally I've expanded a lot in. Surprisingly, even though we've just gone through the whole Bitcoin halving and all that, I mean that's because that's an interest point of the market. But when we go into the mining side, what we as a community found is better is actually mining on the FPGA side, mining those smaller cap coins and selling it to build your holding in Bitcoin. So. But yeah, I mean, back to some of the benefits. Obviously, you're able to pre-mine coins as well. So some coins actually don't come out on the market; they're only available for miners to mine. Or coins come out and there's no supply other than what the miners are putting into the market. That happened with Grin. Yeah, I suppose to wrap it up, the goal that you're trying to achieve as a miner is obviously break even on your equipment costs as soon as possible. And once you've done that, you're actually purchasing or mining coins at a discounted rate to what the market is. You're only paying for electricity, which might be $1.60 US, but you're mining $10 worth of coins per day. So you're making a nice, $8 or $9 margin in there too.
For sure. So next up, any tips on how to get started? You mentioned some people with high power costs, it's just not for them. But I know a lot of people now have got the solar panels, or if you've got that spare capacity, how do you start?
I think, yeah, when you've got the solar, it becomes a very exciting investment that you personally, I think you should consider looking into heavily. For those that don't have the solar and they come to us, we have been fortunate enough to secure hosting solutions now. Early days, we didn't have the capacity for hosting solutions to look at us, but now we have actually been able to get hosting solutions. So we can host mining rigs for people for 11 cents. Aussie, and that includes the maintenance, that includes the hosting fee and the electrical costs as well. So it's been a nice thing. Some of those clients that we had that love this space and really want to get into the Bitcoin mining or the FPGA mining are able to actually use those hosting solutions now. So yeah, I mean, it just comes down to if you can do solar or battery, then absolutely host it yourself. If you can't, then we do have a solution where we can host it for you.
And I should just preface it by saying there's lots of scams out there in the cloud mining world and whatnot, but you guys have grown to Australia's biggest now, and you're able to negotiate cheap power, and you've kind of got a bit of reputation behind you.
Yeah, definitely stay clear of cloud mining. I will give an example where cloud mining can be beneficial, and it's for those opportunities where, say, a pre-mineable coin comes out and you just want to hammer it with as much hash power as you possibly can for a short amount of time. But overall, yeah, the contracts that you're going to sign on for those cloud minings is not to your favor. But yeah, as you said, now with hosting solutions available and what we've been able to achieve, we can compete in the market at lower electrical rates.
Awesome. So next up here, you've got a few different coins, and this is something which we'll keep up to date each month as well for people that are interested in what might be more profitable for them.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we've got here is this is for FPGA mining. Now the FPGA miners pretty much look like this one here. And basically, these miners can mine a whole range of different coins. So these are some of the coins that are available to mine. And basically, that's kind of gives you an idea of the returns that are available. This is based on our electrical rate, which is about 11 cents Aussie. And the most profitable coins that we've been mining have been CKB and Digibyte. And also really good coins because they're not really small market cap coins which don't have volume and you can't get rid of them. These are coins that there's plenty of volume available on the market. Everyone's heard of Digibyte. Most people have now heard of CKB. It's a newer coin this year. But yeah, it gives you a bit of an idea of what's available there.
Fantastic. Can you just hold up the miner again, mate? I had the slide up before, I think, when you...
This one, so actually I'll show you this one as well. So this is the F1 Plus Mini, and that's what's going to be available under your Christmas giveaway. So it's not really a high profitable miner, it's just a bit of a hobby one. But this one here is our white labeled FPGA miner. So yeah, they're pretty neat little things. You can host them at home. But yeah, most of our clients opt to have them hosted under our hosting solution now.
Awesome. Next up, any ASIC tips here for people at home?
Yeah, so I mean, ASIC mining, you definitely can still make some good money out of it. But this slide here is an interesting one because I was having a look. This is a 14 terahash miner. It's one of the older miners that's available in the market. You can actually get these for 110 to 150 US dollars, and the profit that you would make on that in a year is about $197. If you had it hosted for you with kilowatts of 0 0.4 cents. There is still a bit of money to be made on even the lower end equipment and for a lower end price. So as I said, most of our community is pretty much mining on the FPGA mining side. But for those that are dead set that they only want to mine ASIC and they don't want to mine anything else, there's still some money to be made there.
Yeah, that's probably something we should mention as well, that when you have these bear markets, often you'll see the gear that was $1,000 is available for $100 or $200.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were able to tap into that as well. A good example was on the GPU and CPU times. A lot of people, they just had enough. They got burnt. They bought like mining equipment for ridiculous prices in 2017. But we were actually able to pick up a lot of that equipment, even the equipment that we picked up we could sell to gamers for more. It was people just kind of throwing in the towel. But there's always those opportunities coming up where price comes down, people get impatient or irrational, and you can pick up some very good equipment actually.
Awesome. So, what does it look like for the next month? Any tips and things to look forward to in the coming weeks?
From the investment side, I would definitely say that if you're looking to kind of make your most money, FPGA is personally where a lot of people are doing it. To give the idea, the equipment, it costs about $4,000, depending on what time that we can purchase it. That's Australian, and you're making about $15 to $20 a day mining CKB or Digibyte. So CKB and Digibyte, are the most interesting. I do have really good news. Hopefully next month I will be able to give more information on it. But we do have a new coin, which is a very highly anticipated coin that we're about to release as well. I can't tell what coin it is right now, but hopefully next month we'll have that knowledge available.
Awesome. So tying it all together, I think for people at home that have got that spare capacity and they're interested in crypto, particularly if you've got a bit of a cool room at home and you know all these sort of things tie into whether or not it's going to be something that is good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, pretty much exactly what you just said there. If you've got cheap electricity, or even if you don't and you want to use a hosted solution, and you're looking to kind of get that dollar cost averaging, I mean, the equipment should last 3 to 4 years. If you can get that return on investment within a year or so, then you're in a good place. But I mean, you've got to understand it's a long-term investment as well. It's not for everyone. So yeah, make sure you do your own research beforehand or contact one of us and we'll give a non-biased opinion.
Awesome, and we'll put a link below. I think you guys have got some specials coming up to Christmas as well. But let us know in the comments what sort of topics you want us to cover. If there's anything we've missed in the crypto space you'd want us to tick off each month. And I think this is going to be an interesting episode going forward.
That's it. No, I look forward to it. I mean, hopefully each month we can find another hot topic to go across. I think we'll tap on the Bitcoin halvening each time, just see where things are at. But other than that, yeah, it's been good to have a chat, Alex, and thanks for having me on board.
And for members, Will and the guys are in the group now for more regular updates on the mining space as well. So we do appreciate that, guys. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Alex.
Cheers.